Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Neudorf is our special guest here today, here to discuss provincial politics and issues that impact us right here in southwestern Alberta. Nathan, welcome back to BCN.
It's great to be here, Hal. Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's jump right into it.
You bet.
Big protest at the Chinook Regional Hospital. The AUPE was there. A lot of the union members are not happy. The public sector wage cuts. And some of the union members we talked to say, you know what? Jason Kenney is killing Albertans. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think it's part of union negotiations. They have the right to protest and make their feelings known. They do that very well. They have a loud voice. We are not killing people. I think everybody realizes that's a little bit of over-the-top language. We are negotiating through some tough times. They haven't seen raises in a lot of years, and they're making that known. But again, we've been very clear for a while with the fiscal situation of the province. We're going for zero raises, and we are the highest paid jurisdiction in the country.
Was there also a 1% wage cut, and the union's asking for a 2.5% increase?
Exactly.
So that's quite a gap, isn't it?
It is and it's not. Again, it's part of the negotiating process. Each side puts their stake in the ground, and we see this go through the process, the to and fro, and normally it ends up somewhere in the middle. We have seen that. Again, we've been very clear in our position that the end result we're looking for is zero change, to let some of the rest of the country catch up to the levels that we're at, see some of that parity. And we absolutely want to respect doctors, nurses, and all public sector employees for the work that they do.
But 2.5%, doesn't that seem fairly reasonable, though?
I think, well, that's a tough spot. And within context, the province, we have a 60 going on $70 billion debt. $7 billion deficit each year that's been cumulative for quite a number of years. Somehow, some way, in the big scheme of things, we have to stop that slide. And this is one of the ways that we have to be responsible with the money that we have.
Now, Union President Guy Smith also came out and said, you know what, Kenney's just basically attacking us. He doesn't really care so much for the public sector workers. How do you respond to those comments?
I think absolutely untrue. My wife is a nurse, and I know a lot of incredible teachers, doctors, public sector workers. They do it from the goodness of their heart, and they really care about the people they serve, work very, very hard. The fact is government doesn't have any control over private sector wages. We've seen huge decreases in that, huge unemployment. The one sector where the government has authority is on public sector. So that's who we negotiate with, but it doesn't mean that we disrespect the service that they provide.
And how much of the budget is that as well?
It's a huge part of the budget.
More than 50%?
No, but the public sector wages is, it's a vast majority. I think somewhere around 40% of the entire budget across all ministries would end up in wages, yeah.
Premier Kenney announced recently that the government will be divesting from the crude by rail contracts signed by the NDP last year and offloading the contracts to the private sector. Can you really explain to our viewers how this works?
Sure. These contracts were signed right during the campaign period, very poorly contemplated by the previous government. They were going to result in huge billion-dollar losses, multi-billion-dollar losses for the province. And it was not reasonable for us to take on that risk as a government. Private industry, a lot of business is done on the basis of risk and reward. And with the negotiations of the current Minister of Finance, he was able to secure private industry to buy those off of the government, really minimizing that loss to the taxpayer and ultimately save some money for Albertans. Even though there's still a loss, it was much less than it could have been.
Let's talk about some of the blockades here, which has really been disrupting rail traffic. You know, the gas link, the protesters through the Wet'suwet'en Nation in northern BC. How much is that impacting us here in southwestern Alberta, especially getting our grain to market?
It is. It's going to have an increasing cumulative effect with CN stopping shipment to a huge section of eastern Canada. There's going to be many industries that are going to feel the impact of that. And it is very unfortunate when we have the rule of law being completely ignored, not just by the protesters, but unfortunately by our police service. Why are they not enforcing the rule of law? It's a very, very dangerous place for Canada to be when you're basically saying anarchy and chaos is okay.
Premier Kenney actually surprised some people recently when he came out and said, eventually Alberta will have to phase itself out of the oil and gas industry. I think by the year 2050 or so, because of climate change. That shocked a lot of people. Alberta, we're all about oil and gas here for the most part. I mean, down here it's a lot of agriculture.
Yeah.
But Nathan, how are you gonna basically come up with the extra cash, you know, when you're talking about billions upon billions of dollars? Where's that extra revenue going to come from?
Well, I think his words are maybe magnified more so than what he said. He did clarify to caucus that it is a natural resource. By definition, it's limited, and at some point in time, it won't be there anymore. But we are really taking a lead in terms of our tier fund, technology and innovation for that, so that we can invest in the future and where we go from here. It's going to take time. It's going to be a transition. We're talking decades and decades, not tomorrow. I think we're doing it in a responsible way and providing the funds to help invest into that future.
Will there be more money put into green technology, the agricultural industry?
So, like I said, this is over decades. I'm not sure exactly. A lot of innovation technology will speak to that. Obviously, agriculture, it does not matter how long we're going to be around. A renewable resource that we all need is food. So that will be one. It's something that we're known for. It's something I speak on in the legislature all the time, is the world-class agricultural sector that we have here in southern Alberta.
Okay, let's talk now about the Tech Frontier mine, the big oil sands project here. Still waiting on the feds, you know, whether or not they're going to allow grant approval on this massive project. How important is Tech Frontier to our economy here in Alberta?
Well, it would certainly be a massive help. $20 billion investment over a multiple number of years, 7,700 jobs. This would be a really great thing to have us going. I think the biggest concern, again, is just the fabric of our nation. The Liberal government's put in guidelines and rules of what they require for any kind of development to proceed. Tech has spent like 9 years on this and checked every single box, including committing to net zero by 2050. So does a rule of law govern or does it not? Because if it doesn't, again, one more factor that says, what rules are we following here? And who's going to enforce it? And is it right for you to put out these rules and then change it when you get to the goal line? Very, very concerning for Alberta, and our response will be significant if we don't see the rule of law win.
How about TMX and the fact that we're finally going to get shovels into the ground here, creating more jobs and revenue for the Alberta economy? How important is that?
That is, it's of paramount importance for Alberta right now. We have a resource, we've got to get it to market. That's a pretty basic principle. We have a glut that forces our price down when we can't get it there. Once we increase that capacity, we should see that price start to stabilize and increase. That's good for every Albertan. It's good for jobs, and it's responsible. I mean, again, we've seen more rail cars spill just because of the length of train and the amount of product they've got to do. By far, the most economically and environmentally friendly way to do that is through pipelines.
As you know, in the last federal election, the Liberals were shut out of Alberta and Saskatchewan. A lot of people are not happy with the federal Liberals and Justin Trudeau here in this province. He does have some support, but for the most part, you know, it's not as popular. So what about Western separatists when you keep hearing that? You know, all the events you're at, right?
Yes.
Representing Lethbridge as an MLA, the Western separatist movement, the Wexit movement. Tell me about some of that and how you talk to people.
Again, it's a frustration that's simmering. We've seen it ebb and flow over the years, potentially and most often politically grounded. But we're seeing that rise again and again. If the decisions go against Alberta for no discernible legal reason, man, it really flares up. People have a right to be frustrated. They are expressing that frustration. We are trying to strengthen their voice with the federal government and realize that the federal government has an obligation to the nation, to national unity, to represent every region fairly and equitably. We feel that hasn't been done. We are trying to strengthen that voice and remain one country. I'm very, very proud to wear the Canadian flag when I travel anywhere in the world. We have a truly incredible history that is recognized by much of the globe, and we want to see that work in community. But when things happen like this, it really puts that to the test.
How about investment in southwestern Alberta, in particular Lethbridge here? How can we get more businesses to want to open up shop here in our city?
I think we're doing that. I think that's part of the success story of the Ministry of Red Tape Reduction. I think limiting government and government interference that we've talked about, allowing businesses to work within a good structural framework. There's freedom within that framework when we allow businesses to do what they need to do. And I think that's we're seeing that red tape reduction removed from them. And then the other thing that we have to do here in the South is make sure that we're recognized and known for the great things that we do, the resources, the collaboration, the cooperation that we have. We really set a high bar for those measures.
What about the supervised consumption site? A lot of people are asking, is the province going to be shutting it down here in Lethbridge or moving it? What's the latest?
I don't have any specific news. We're going into a budget cycle. So some of that will be released very, very shortly. The budget will be released on February 27th. And with that, I believe very shortly thereafter, the report on the supervised consumption sites from the panel. So it is coming, and the end is very in sight to where we're going, the plan moving forward by the province.
Drug and gang violence is getting out of control here in our city. Recently, we had a shooting, our first homicide in the last 2 years. You know, somebody from Toronto came here, shot a 35-year-old guy. What are we doing about the crime, specifically in our region here?
Yeah, I'm very pleased that the Minister of Justice has been down to Lethbridge a number of times. Just recently, again, met with some of our judges as well as the city. His plans to help have a drug court in Lethbridge. We're expecting some of those announcements again, along with the budget, some of that directive and initiative for rural crime, putting boots to the ground is being unrolled this year. So really proud of his initiative and his work on that front to help support our police officers as their frontline work in that area.
How about even preventing the drugs coming into our region?
Yeah, that's the other option.
Game plan together, right?
Yeah, that's the other option that he's talked about. That expanding the mandate for alert, which is the police force dedicated to shutting down organized crime. They've seen a lot of success around the province, and he has been looking into providing that service down in southern Alberta. So again, something to look forward to when the budget is unrolled.
Scan unit as well? Any
Scan unit is a little different. Scan unit has a much more specific mandate. And that funding doesn't seem to be available at this time. But again, with the...
And those scanned units shut down the drug houses, right?
That's right.
Specifically.
Where
Work with
alert...
Alberta sheriffs?
Yeah, where alert does a little bit more. We might be expanding what alert can do to include some of that. We might be expanding the presence of alert in Lethbridge and southern Alberta. And then they are doing what you're talking about, actually going to the source, stopping that inflow, hitting organized crime at the source. And I think we can see just as much, if not more, benefit that way.
Let me ask you something. You and Shannon Phillips, I mean, you're with UCP, she's the NDP. You guys go to different events together, shaking hands, kissing babies, meeting a lot of your constituents.
Yeah.
But tell me about, there's got to be a little bit of friction there sometimes as well. She's from the far left, you're on the right.
Yeah.
You have to meet in the middle, I guess, right?
Well, we have a very good discourse on different ideas. She is a highly intelligent person representing her constituents and viewpoint. I take a different direction, obviously, different parties. We've had...
But still intelligent.
Still intelligent, I
Yes.
hope. We've had a number of great conversations. It doesn't happen in the legislature as often as maybe people would like.
I was going to say, aren't there any fireworks at the Ledge in Edmonton when you guys go up there?
Well, it's different in the legislature. Particularly, a question period is set up to ask questions of ministers and ministries.
Okay.
I am not, and neither is she, so I have no opportunity to ask her questions, and she would not have an opportunity to ask me.
How about bringing forth a private member's bill, then?
That's right, but you have to be, you're drawn out a hat for that, so right. I'm not made the list at this point.
Okay.
So there are other times during debate where you can share opposing viewpoints on the same topic. That's not necessarily seen as well, but for the most part, we have a very professional relationship, serving a lot of the same people. And I think some good constructive debates can happen at different times. Good dialogue. Yeah, just different times and places.
That's right. Nathan Neudorf, Lethbridge East MLA with UCP. Thanks a lot for joining me in studio here today.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Hal.